In this video, I'm going to make a top to go with my Egyptian skirt. And it can also be worn under the halter dress that I made with the Egyptian style. First thing to do is cut out two sections the same size you want as your shirt to be. And then you have your template shirt, which you have to pin together. Make sure that the middle is in the middle of your pin together shirt. Okay, so the shirt that fits me onto the pieces of pattern. I've got two separate pieces. I've put them together so that everything meets up, and I've got the shirt put on so that it meets up. And I'm going to make sure to leave a seam allowance that's pretty healthy. This is the cut out pattern in adult size. And I may have to do some trims and things, but other than that, it's pretty well ready to start with the sewing. I keep referring to a French seam, and while I'm doing this one, I will thought I'd explain it a little better. For a French seam, you have to sew really close to the hem with the wrong sides facing together, and then when you're finished, you turn it inside out and you sew the actual hem line, which ends up hiding this little outer edge inside of the fabric so that it's not as visible. It's really good for very fine materials, lace, stuff like that, and it makes it neater on the inside, and the outside just looks like your regular hem. So I've sewn the seams at the arms and at the sides, and I left the neck open still, and the armholes I will likely put elastic around them just to bring them in a bit and make it a little poofy. And I'm hoping to add a flounce to the bottom, and then maybe some seam tape to make the neck stand out, and we're done. But first I have to hem the flounce and sew it together. I got the flounce ends that I want put onto the bottom hem of the skirt. I'm also going to use the extra left over to make a little bit of a casing to add some really weak elastic in order to make it more tight in the waist area, so it'll look a little bit nicer. And I'll have to hem the flounce and hem the neckline, or add the bias tape to the neckline just to make it look different. And then after all the hemming, we'll be done the shirt. Another thing to remember is to pin the right sides together and put the pattern so that when you're finished, it'll come down and be the same direction as the rest of the pattern. So now I've sewn in the flounces, but I also want to create a little bit of a place for elastic, so I end up using that to hide the hem for this and create the casing for a little bit of elastic, just to cinch in the waist a little bit. So again, with the casing, I left some room open to put the casing through, and I've got the elastic with the pin so that I can haul it all the way through. When you get it all the way through, you sew the two ends together, making sure that, of course, it's not twisted or anything, otherwise you'll have lumps and bumps where you don't want them. So I've put all the seam binding on the neckline, and I also used a very similar one on the bottom of the skirt, the shirt, and I just need to sew them both on and then do the arms, and we're done. Okay, so I have pinned and sewn one of the two arms, and of course I've got my elastic to go through just to bring them in to make it a little bit of a poof. And of course you don't sew all the way to the end because you want to throw your elastic through that. And then I do that on both sides, and we're done. In Boho fashion, the one rule is there are no real rules, and if you make a mistake, it's always fixable by cutting it down or doing something a little bit differently. I cut the body a little too long, So I ended up having to cut it down, and I added some lace so that it would look kind of fancy around the waist. And the neck was a little wider than I wanted, so I put some lace there as well, and some seam binding. And then I'm going to just put a little bit of elastic, and that should pull in the neck nicely. And I finish off the arms by just doing a hem and adding in some elastic just to bring it in. So when doing freestyle sewing, the rule is make it so that it fits, and if you have to do some corrections, it's not really that huge a deal. Okay, so I've added the flouncy section, put a little bit of lace elements to it, and elasticized the arms so that they fit a little more snugly. And this gives me the Egyptian top to go with the earlier project of the skirt. So now I've got the complete set, skirt and top.